views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff and management of WWDB-TV.
Whether she's walking the red carpet or doing interviews, you'll find her with celebrities and all the latest news. She's here, she's there, she's everywhere, she's always on the go. So sit back, relax, and get ready, 'cause it's the Corey Taylor Talks Show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corey Taylor Talks, live from Las Vegas, the #1 teen talk show. I am so excited about my guest today. He is just an incredible author. He has been through so much. He has amazing stories to tell, and you're going to love him because I do. And I'm really excited to have him on. So we have Mr. Philip Myers with us. So hi, Philip. How are you?
Great, Corey. It's a delight to be with you, and I'm honored to be talking to you. You do so much fine work.
Oh my goodness! Well, thank you very much, and absolutely vice versa. I like I said, I think you're amazing, and your stories are phenomenal, and I'm so excited to get right into it. So for some people who might not know you or be familiar with your work, can you explain what you do and what well, especially your latest book? We'll get into all of your books, of course, but just explain a little bit about your background and how you became an author and everything.
Sure. Becoming an author was almost an accident. I went to the Soviet Union just as it was about to break up. So this is early 90s,
right,
to do a software company. And my focus was entirely high-tech. I had no thoughts whatsoever of getting into the magical, mystical world of espionage.
Right.
So as things were kind of loosening up and breaking up there, much to my surprise, somebody one day just more or less announced to me, well, I was a spy. I was part of a group that was going to warn the United States of a nuclear attack by the Soviets. And I'm thinking, do I want to hear this? This is not what I'm here for. I'm here for software. But they felt a great need to sort of bare their souls and felt very liberated at the time. So he explained that the ringleader of this spy group had moved to New York and become very good friends with Jackie Kennedy. Now, this is after her second husband, Aristotle Onassis, had died, just after that. So she was single in New York. She had started working as a book editor at Doubleday. And this ringleader of the spy group went to work at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And they collaborated on a book about an exhibit from Russia. Well, I thought, good Lord, what do I do with this story? The people that were telling me clearly thought that this would be maybe a movie that Hollywood might pick up, something like Hunt for Red October, a great spy story. Right. So I talked to some people in Hollywood, but I decided I should really look at it as a book first. And thought, well, I know the ringleader knew Jackie Kennedy, but good Lord, there's not a chance in where that I can get to her. And she was the most famous woman in the world at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And much to my surprise, but, shy fellow that I'm not, I simply called Doubleday Publishing in New York and asked for her secretary. Well, he explained that she was out for a few days. It was New Year's holidays. But said, well, fax me back a couple pages about this story. I'll show it to her. So I'm thinking, okay, I'll get a polite drop-dead letter. And imagine my shock when a few days later I came in and there was a voicemail from her saying, please call me right away. I'm really interested in what you sent me.
How?
Well, oh my goodness. I mean, this is crazy.
No, of
so,
course. Yeah.
For the younger readers who don't know, I would say go to YouTube and type in Zapruder film, Z-A-P-R-U-D-E-R. So Zapruder film. It's a famous film of the JFK assassination. And it shows Jackie crawling up in the back of the limo, trying to grab a chunk of her husband's skull that's just been blown off. I mean, to have this lady suddenly be real, be walking down the hallway towards me, and welcoming me and taking me into her office and getting me a cup of coffee. It was just surreal.
Oh, I bet. No, I bet. I mean, like you said, I mean, she is just such an icon. I mean, for years and to this day, she's just such a big part of history, and people always looked up to her and loved her. And I mean, the lady has been through so much as well, so that is such a cool thing that you got to work with her. And I mean, that's awesome. And it just kind of fell right there for you, so that's great.
Yeah, the surprise, because I really expected her to be kind of aloof and difficult and self-protective. The big surprise was how sort of open and friendly and candid and funny she was. Once she decided to throw herself into this project, there were just no barriers. And in no time flat, she decided that she would freelance the thing out of her apartment instead of doing it out of Doubleday. So I get this call from her assistant saying, well, would you mind meeting at Jackie's penthouse apartment from now on? I'm like, okay. Yeah, that didn't take a lot of convincing.
I guess if you're forced to me to, right?
Yeah, if I have to, gosh. But it was amazing because she was so gripped by this story and trying to find out what had happened to her friend. And she's the one that inserted into the research that she thought he must have been murdered. This was a real jolt, because suddenly it's a very different thing if I'm digging into a 1950s Cold War spy story versus the murder of her very close friend a few months before. It completely changed the character of what was going on.
Right.
And it certainly turned out that she was right. You know, all the research seemed to point to the fact that, yes, indeed, he had been murdered. That the KGB had found out years later about him committing treason to the Soviet Union. And even though he was now living in the States, they took an opportunity and bumped him off.
Wow.
But, yeah, Jackie... one of the things, we were pursuing a lot of different channels, but one of the things that really surprised me that she was very enthusiastic about was we gave her friend's picture to two psychics to get their read, one in New York and one in Santa Barbara. And she was just on the edge of her seat, wanting to know what the psychics had to say. This is the sort of stuff I've just never seen anywhere in print about her.
Right.
So I talked to her about doing a book about psychic research in the Soviet Union, because it turned out the KGB in their hospital, it was euphemistically called the Military Medical Academy. They had been doing a lot of research on mental telepathy, on remote viewing, all kinds of topics of psychic research. And she was really keen to do a book on this. So she was constantly full of surprises.
Oh, I bet. And that's just so cool that you got to really experience that with her and really get to know her, because I'm sure a lot of people don't. And I like we said, that woman has been through so much, and for her to be so warm and welcoming to you. And I think it's really cool that she was interested in psychics and stuff too. That's also great to know that you got to do that. And what was like her reaction with that? What did they say? What did the psychic say and stuff? Was she happy? Was she sad? Like, what was the reaction with that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because the two psychics came up with almost identical information.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was the first striking thing. They both saw this auto accident scene where the guy died in France, and a cast of characters and some physical things like a brown suitcase. They both picked up on the same things. Their reports were almost identical, which was astonishing. And at that point, Jackie grew very alarmed. It somehow made the whole thing much more real that her friend had been murdered and that we were on the edge of something very spectacular and very current. This was not ancient history. I mean, this was just about a year after a friend was murdered.
Oh, wow. So it's
Yeah.
very fresh. Yeah, absolutely. And so
One of the things that was so striking about her was she was just fearless. I mean, she had gone through the worst, as you know. I mean, you just how anybody can survive what she went through is just amazing.
Right.
And yet she had ended up so grounded and centered and together and kind. I mean, that was the thing that just kept coming across. She was very, very thoughtful. She was always suggesting things she could do for me and knocking herself out, anticipating anything that I might need in the project.
Wow.
She was just great.
How cool. Yeah, I bet that was so fascinating to see that whole different side of her. Absolutely. I think that's really cool.
Right, and it was a great lesson in what you can survive and still come out as a sane, happy person.
Yeah.
You know, the worst possible adversity, which is, I'm sure, something that you know your teen audience can really learn from. Is that when you think that things are just as bad as they can possibly be, you still may have a fantastic life ahead.
Yeah.
And that's where she got. That, you know, she was just having a great old time.
Yeah.
At one point, for example, when some of this information was coming back, and I thought it was pretty sensational, I said to her very bluntly, I said, I'm really concerned about how sensational this is and what the tabloids might do with it. And, you know, the last thing in the world I ever want to do is cause you any distress. I didn't contact you to bring you a problem. And she just kind of waved her hand and said, no, I don't care. You know, Hollywood will do whatever Hollywood wants to do. I don't care what they do. She was really down on Hollywood.
Oh.
And she just said, the only thing that matters to me is that the book that comes out of this is accurate. It's honest.
Yeah.
And so as I wrote this, I felt really a great obligation to her to make very clear when I had hard evidence of something, when I was connecting dots, when I was inferring something, when I had suspicions of something, you know, so that if you read the book, I don't think I've overdone it anywhere in terms of recounting what came out of this crazy research project that I found myself thrust into.
Right. No, I can't even imagine that. And I did she ever get to read the finished book? Was she ever able to, or see part of it or anything?
No. When she passed away, and this is a really, really interesting, really important point. When she passed away in '94, I had 800 pages of research and no manuscript. Now, we had been exchanging research reports. I was sending her regularly updates on everything I was doing, everything I was finding. So she was reading a lot of the material that went into the book. But in terms of having a manuscript to read, no. And every time I would send her a research report that seemed to more clearly indicate that there was a link between the death of her husband, JFK, and the death of her Russian friend, that there was some common link, maybe the same person involved in coordinating.
Wow.
I expected her to just say, okay, that's it, I'm out, forget it. But no, she was having a blast. She carried on. She sent me one fax, I think, one time after the most provocative research report I could send, and just said, your faxes are intriguing, thanks very much, keep them coming. So I quit worrying about it. I just fed everything to her. But there was one big mystery, one huge mystery, Corey, that I didn't solve until she was gone. I wish she were here so I could talk to her about it. But I had gotten, while we were still working together, I had gotten an anonymous phone call with a research tip. And this is the craziest thing. This man's voice came on the phone and said, the music of the 60s is the same as the music in the late 80s. Just remember that. Click. And I sat down with him and I said, what on earth does that mean?
Right.
Well, as we went along, it seemed clear that the 60s and the late 80s were references to the deaths of her husband and her friend. But the music, we couldn't figure out what the music was.
Right.
And I kept digging and digging and digging. And when she passed away, we had some theories about the music. There was another call with Gregorian chants, so it seemed to suggest something to do with the Catholic Church. But we didn't really have an answer. Years later, the answer popped up. And in the music, I think, was Strauss. Richard Strauss wrote these beautiful waltzes in Vienna. And Strauss is the name of the man that I think that the research indicates was a Soviet mole that was involved in the death of both JFK and her Russian friend.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And Strauss, and this is where it gets really weirdly current. Strauss was at one point the head of the Democratic Party, head of the Democratic National Committee in Washington. Well, this whole thing about Trump and the Russians and where the Russians trying to influence elections. Good heavens, if I'm right that a Soviet mole was running the Democratic Party, it shows anything that was going on with Trump, nothing new. The Soviets were very intent on affecting American elections, right up to the point of having their guy running the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Now, does it scare you that you wrote a book about this and releasing all this information? Like, does that scare you? Because, I mean, this is some pretty big stuff, obviously. Does that scare you, or are you just kind of fearless?
Well, I've gotten over being scared.
Right.
And honestly, I was keen to get the book done and out there so that bumping me off couldn't somehow or other prevent the information getting out.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think my best guarantee was to put it out there. Interestingly, my publisher, a little company called Entrepot Publishing, has a Facebook page. And when the second the book went up on Amazon, it was swamped with inquiries from Ukraine and Russia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Hundreds and hundreds of looks from Ukraine and Russia for an English language book published here,
Right.
So I think that I pressed a lot of buttons over there. Let's just put it this way. There's no way I'm ever setting foot in Russia again.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, no way. And I'm probably not going to Texas either. Strauss was a very prominent Texan and has a lot of friends there. One of my sources said that on the day JFK was assassinated in Dallas, this fellow Bob Strauss was in Dallas at the home of big oil billionaires, the Hunt brothers. They're coordinating things. So I'm very uncomfortable with forces in Texas that might be very unhappy about this.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I don't blame you at all. Because, like I said, that's some pretty deep stuff that you're revealing. So you have to be careful, I'm sure. But I think it's important you did get it out there. And now it's all out there. So you're right. What good would doing anything to you now do?
Yeah, I think everybody on both sides has been very curious to see what I had.
Right.
There were a lot of, for example, drafts of emails that went back and forth, and I know that all my stuff was being monitored very closely. During the time that I was working with Jackie, there was a phone repair truck parked in front of my office for 2 years nonstop.
Oh.
They could have repaired every phone within a mile.
Right.
Yeah, the boys were just out there monitoring things.
Huh.
And I've seen some of that start up again since the book was published. But I really just don't worry about it because everything I have to say now is out there.
Right.
It doesn't accomplish. If anything, it would be, worse for any unhappy parties to bump me off because it would draw attention to it.
No, you're right. Completely. It would be stupid.
Yeah, very stupid.
So kind of talking with that and everything, Now, Jackie and JFK's assassination, there's so much controversy behind it. Even though it happened years ago, still so many questions and so many things. Did Jackie really talk about that with you? Was it hard for her to even discuss something, especially now that it also pertained to her friend and she felt they were connected? Was that really difficult for her to speak with you? Did she even talk about the assassination really? What was that with her? Like, how did you deal with that with her?
You know, what she talked about, if you had to know the assassination research and story to know what she was talking about. She didn't sit down and say, hey, let me tell you what it was like riding in the limo and almost getting shot myself. Right. No, nothing like that. But the first time, after I'd been talking to her for 4 or 5 months on the phone, I went back to New York and sat down with her eyeball to eyeball for the first time. And almost immediately, she launches into the history of a KGB defector named Yuri Nosenko. I was stunned because Nosenko, the history of this guy Nosenko, who defected in 1964, just months after the assassination, that's right at the heart of the question of were the Russians involved or not. If you believe Nosenko's information, the Russians are off the hook. If you don't believe Nosenko, the Russians were implicated. Well, at the time, the head of counterintelligence at the CIA did not believe Nosenko. He put him in solitary confinement for 2.5 years and tried to break him. And he didn't tell the Warren Commission about this. So the Nosenko story is absolutely at the heart of were the Russians involved in the assassination or not. So to sit down in Jackie's office and have her instantly bring up Nosenko, I knew exactly what she was saying. Right. She was saying, look, I'm curious whether the story you've brought in the door somehow or other relates to Nosenko and Russian involvement in Dallas. And that just blew me away.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunned me, because I hadn't even thought of it at that point. But the big question that she and I did try to grapple with is, why did the Russian guy tell me this story? Why did this incredible espionage tale just fall into my lap?
Yeah.
And what was the motivation for bringing it up? Well, in the long run, I think the motivation was that the Russian guy knew about Bob Strauss being a Soviet mole and wanted me to expose him and to have Jackie involved in the process. And the one thing that would absolutely have caused a furor was for Jackie herself to say, look, I think we need to look seriously into whether the Russians were involved.
Right.
That would have just, blown everything sky high.
Right.
So, so she knew exactly what she was doing. We never got to the point of her saying, okay, I'm ready to have a press conference and say I think the Russians might have been involved. But that's the direction the research was all going, and she understood that.
Interesting.
So that's why I think I felt really a strong...
Oh, are you still there, sir? Phil, are you still there? Oh. Okay, we're having some technical...
It looks like Strauss
Oh, Phil.
was involved.
Oh, okay, you disappeared. We dropped your call for a minute there. You're back now, though, so okay.
Oh, that's odd.
Yeah, that was weird. I was going to say, speaking of the listening to Seth, there you go. But yeah.
You never know.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, you never know about technology.
I really don't doubt it, because I've had a couple weird things like that happen every now and then for similar stuff. So, but yes, let's get right back into it. Sorry about that.
Okay. So as I dug into the Strauss thing, I felt not to put...
That's his fault.
Oh, Philip, I'm so sorry. It's breaking up a lot right now. Can you hear us? Okay. Wow. I don't even know what to say.
Let me try walking a few feet and see if it makes any difference.
Right now, you're completely clear.
Okay.
Yeah, it's every time you talk about it, honestly.
Well, maybe somebody's jamming me.
Yeah, I really wouldn't even doubt it at this point.
Yeah, I don't want to get paranoid, but these things do attract attention. I did a TV interview with a network in Australia recently, and I know I've gotten a whole lot more attention since that.
Oh, I bet, and very well deserved, because I think, especially the fact that you worked on this with Jackie for so many years. I think it deserves all the attention, and it really needs to come out, the truth. So I think it should, absolutely.
Yeah, in light of all the information about Russian interference in U.S. elections and this history of them apparently, recruiting the head of the Democratic National Committee, I think it's very appropriate. If I had my way, I'd have a congressional committee sit down and take a look at all of this, because I've read virtually everything there is to read on the JFK assassination.
Right.
And nobody anywhere ever has come up with this link to Strauss and his role and his closeness to J. Edgar Hoover. There's a lot of speculation that Hoover somehow or other was involved.
Oh, wow.
And Hoover and the mob. But the Hoover-Strauss link is the thing that really needs a look. Strauss started out as an FBI agent in World War II and became very close to J. Edgar Hoover.
Mm.
And then he left the FBI and started a law firm that was a spectacular success. It ended up representing the Saudi royal family. It became one of the powerhouse law firms in Washington, D.C. It was just crazy.
Right. Yeah, very interesting stuff there. Now, when this book came out, did you ever get in contact with any of Jackie's, their relatives or anything? Have anyone reached out to you? Did they have any type of response with this, or are they just trying to kind of ignore it because it was so long ago? They don't really want to bring it back up again.
Well, none of them have reached out to me, and I'm not even slightly surprised about that. When Jackie passed away, she had in her apartment at least the equivalent of a banker's storage box of messages from me with these research reports indicating all kinds of things as we were looking for the links between the two murders. So I talked to one of her friends and said, look, I'm really concerned about the kids going through the apartment, coming across all this crazy stuff. I don't know if they know what their mom was up to. So she said, well, look, here's what you do. Write to Nancy Tuckerman, Jackie's longtime assistant and best friend, and just explain to her. So I did, and I didn't get a response at that point. Nancy made sense because I had gotten a note from Nancy the day, Nancy sent me a note from Jackie the day after Jackie died.
Oh.
But anyway, the family just never touched it with a 10-foot pole, and what I was told in no uncertain terms was that all of Jackie's papers were going to be locked up for 50 years, and they were going to be organized by Nancy Tuckerman and Scott Moyers, who was her assistant at Doubleday. So I really didn't expect anything to see the light of day. I certainly didn't expect the kids to call me up and say, oh, tell us more about what our mother was doing here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure it was it's such a horrible topic for the family, and with Jackie, of course, I'm sure that was very difficult. So I'm sure they wouldn't want to. They didn't want to get back into the past. I'm sure it'd be very difficult for anyone, especially their family. So but at least you got your truth out now, and I think a lot of people are paying attention, and the world really needs to pay attention to this.
Yeah. The one interesting exception is I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. recently has said that he thinks that both the assassination of his father and his uncle, JFK, ought to be reopened and looked at.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, that's a big surprise. Now, but I don't think Caroline Kennedy has ever said beans or boo about that. She's just very, very private. And honestly, I don't feel like I want to intrude in any way on her.
Right.
You know, whether her kids would take an interest, I don't know. But yeah, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has made some noises that he thinks it should be reopened. And if that happens, I certainly hope I would have a chance to sit down with a congressional committee or anyone investigating this and lay out all the indications. Because fortunately, I've got my 800 pages of research, and I got plenty of material to back up what I came up with, right down to the photographs of Jackie's Russian friend that we gave to the psychics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say you have Jackie herself as backup, so there you go. You can't really get any much closer to it. So I just think it's so fascinating, and I'm so happy you looked more into this and you actually got to work with Jackie, because I'm sure it made her feel better. Of course, I'm sure it was very difficult, but I'm sure in the end it made her feel better knowing more about what actually happens to her husband and her friend.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fair to say from her reaction to the whole Russian thing and to whether the story I took her was somehow connected to Dallas, that she wasn't buying the Warren Commission. Yeah, she could have easily just shut me down in a heartbeat and said, no, let's not go that direction on the research. Let's just ignore that. Let's go a different direction.
Right.
And I would certainly not have crossed her. I always told her what I was going to do. One of the really interesting things, she was, as I say, very relaxed, very gracious, very funny, very kind. But there was one thing that I proposed we do that set her off. She reacted very adamantly, almost violently, which is I said, I think we should interview President Nixon. Now, Nixon, who was one of the ultimate hardline Cold Warriors, also was very close to the Texas oil people and to J. Edgar Hoover. And, of course, Nixon and JFK in the 1960 election went at it. Well, when I suggested, let's talk to Nixon, she just went ballistic. It was like, absolutely, positively not. There was no way she was going to have Nixon involved in her project.
Wow.
Yeah. It's funny because when Nixon and JFK were in the Senate together in the 50s, before the 1960 election, they were actually rather good friends. They got along well. And I had gotten to know Nixon's White House Chief of Staff, Bob Haldeman. He was living in Santa Barbara. And Bob Haldeman was talking to Nixon on my behalf and trying to run down some things. And Jackie just shuddered. She was kind of upset when I said I'd been talking to Haldeman and Haldeman was supposed to be talking to Nixon. So I just shut that avenue down.
Right.
If she didn't want to go there, we weren't going to go there. And thus she was entirely capable of saying, nope, we're not going to go there. There was no question. So when I had the green light to go where I did go and to pursue the leads that I was pursuing, I knew she was totally on board.
No, that's great. And I think that's really cool that you respected her wishes as well, too, because I think so many people would just do what they wanted to and really be kind of shady with the whole thing. But you were legit and you really stuck to your words. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. But she commanded that kind of respect. I mean, she was just such a decent person. And as I said to her when we talked about the sensationalistic aspect and whether the tabloids would go nuts, I didn't want to do anything to cause her distress.
Right.
She'd had all the distress any one human being should ever have. But she was having fun. That's the thing. Once I became really confident that she was having fun with this project, then it was full speed ahead. She brought a friend in to work on it with us, somebody that she had worked with at Doubleday, named Paula. And Paula had said, oh, you know, there are certain rules with Jackie. You never, ever mention the president or the family. You just do not do that. But I got comfortable enough with Jackie that I did do it. And Paula was absolutely shocked. She thought Jackie would cut me off. But no, Jackie really liked to be treated like a normal person.
Right.
One time I was at the apartment, for example, and she said, I'm about to go to Sweden for a trip. She was going with her then-boyfriend, Maurice Templesman. And she explained that her son, JFK Jr., had been in Sweden recently on a kayaking trip. Well, shortly after that, you know, first of all, I was astonished she was telling me about her son and what he was up to. But then not long after that, JFK Jr. wrote an article in the travel section of the New York Times about his kayaking trip in Sweden. So I did what I do with any other mom. I clipped it out and sent it to her. Well, Paula went nuts. She said, are you crazy? You think she didn't see it? Well, of course she saw it. But, you know, it's like she was a normal mom. She was proud of her son. And she didn't react badly against that. She liked me treating her like a normal person.
Yeah.
I quit worrying about tiptoeing around on eggshells.
And that's probably why you two got along so well, because everyone probably did treat her like that, and you were one of the only people that really treated her like a normal human being. So,
yeah, you know, and recently I've met somebody else that knew her, that worked for her often, somebody who's just not a public figure at all, but knew her rather well. And we talked a lot. And he said, you know, the thing I really like is that you understand that she just saw herself as a normal person.
right.
You know, she did not walk around. Paula recounted a great story. She said they were in a limo one time going to the ballet. And Jackie was saying, you know, I've been contacted by a charity that wants to involve me. And I said, I don't know why. You know, I can't imagine why they picked me, because I've never had anything whatsoever to do with their cause, whatever, and I don't know what charity it was. And Paula said, are you kidding, Jackie? I mean, of course they'd want you. You're the most famous woman in the world. She said Jackie just went absolutely beet red. She was very embarrassed, and she just didn't walk around thinking, oh, I'm the most famous woman in the world. No, just absolutely positively not. Very modest. Again, that was a surprise. It wasn't what I expected at all.
No, she sounds like an amazing woman, and everything she went through, and to still be that humble, and even with how famous she was, and how much everyone just looked out for her every move. I think that's awesome. She was still so humble, and that she worked with you, and you got to finish this amazing book now that really exposed so much, and really shows the truth, which I think is very important for her as well.
Yeah. The other thing, the one word that I also really want to emphasize is she was smart.
Oh, I
mean,
bet.
she was Hillary before it was okay to be Hillary.
Right.
Yeah, this woman was really sharp. She was an aggressive editor. You know, I'm not shy. And if I put an idea out there that she didn't think was a good idea, she'd just chop me down. Yeah, the first time it happened, I was a little taken back. But it was just so striking, and her analytical skills were fantastic. And she was, of course, very sophisticated. She knew the ways of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, well...
But the intelligence combined with the kindness is the sort of lasting impression.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's so amazing that you did this and you got to work with her for so long. And I think you're amazing. So please tell everyone where they can go and get your book and support you if you're on social media or anything. Where can people follow you? Just go over everything.
Sure. The book can be obtained either paperback or ebook on Amazon.
Okay.
And then if you're an ebook user but you prefer Apple or Google or Barnes & Noble, the ebook is on those sites too. I've got a Facebook page and also on Instagram and Twitter. It's all one word, Phil Myers Author, PhilMyers Author, Phil Myers Author. So you can go to Facebook and search Phil Myers Author, or Instagram or Twitter, and you'll find me fast. And then I've got 14 other books too that
goodness.
I've released.
Oh my
So
goodness.
this is my new career. I'm supposed to retire, but I don't think I'm going to be retiring at all.
Well, good for you, and you have awesome stories. So I think I'm glad you are, honestly, because there's so much more left to share with the world. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Phil. You're truly just an amazing man. I'd love to have you on again someday too.
Anytime. The next 5 books are all espionage. They're fiction, except they're not very fictional.
Mm-hmm.
They spin off from things that I discovered while doing the research with Jackie.
Oh, wow.
But I created some characters and some events, so I have to label them fiction.
Right.
But those 5 books I'd love to talk about, too. It's all about a secret fund to run black operations against the Soviets.
Oh,
And it's incredible stuff.
how cool. Yeah, no, I'd love to have you back on, and we can definitely talk about that. That sounds great.
Anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Phil. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.
Okie doke. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And once again, that was Phil Myers. What an amazing guy. What an incredible story. And he worked with Jackie on such an important book that thank goodness it's finally getting out there. And hopefully it will open people's eyes a little bit more. And I think it's a very important part. So thank you guys so much for watching. And remember, never give up, always believe, and you'll achieve. Thank you. God bless.